Nestled in the heart of a forgotten valley, the town of Black Hollow was a place where time seemed to stand still. Its streets were lined with crumbling buildings, and its people carried an air of unease. But there was one place no one dared to speak of, the old Holloway House. It stood at the edge of the woods, its windows shattered, and its walls stained with the weight of decades. The townsfolk whispered about it in hushed tones, warning their children to stay away. "That house isn't right," they said. "It's alive." But no one could explain why. Until Clara arrived. Clara Bennett was a journalist with a reputation for uncovering the truth, no matter how dark. She had come to Black Hollow after hearing rumors of the Holloway House, a place where people disappeared and whispers of the supernatural lingered. She checked into the town's only motel, a rundown place with flickering neon lights and a creaky sign that read, "Black Hollow Inn." The owner, an elderly man named Harold, eyed her suspiciously as she signed the register. "You here for the house, aren't you?" he asked. Clara nodded. Harold leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "That house isn't just old. It's wrong. It's alive, and it doesn't like visitors." The next morning, Clara made her way to the Holloway House. The path was overgrown, the trees leaning inward as if trying to block her way. As she approached, she felt a chill, a cold that seemed to seep into her bones. The house loomed before her, its broken windows like empty eyes staring into her soul. She hesitated, but curiosity pushed her forward. The front door, weathered and splintered, creaked open on its own, as if the house was inviting her in. Clara took a deep breath and stepped inside. Inside, the air was thick and stale, carrying the scent of decay. Clara's flashlight revealed walls covered in strange, pulsating veins that seemed to throb with a life of their own. She reached out to touch one, and it recoiled, as if alive. The house seemed to breathe, its walls expanding and contracting like the ribs of some great beast. Clara's heart raced as she realized the house wasn't just haunted. It was alive, and it was aware of her presence. As Clara moved deeper into the house, she began to hear whispers. At first they were faint, like the rustling of leaves. But soon they grew louder, more distinct. "Help us," they pleaded. "We're trapped." The voices seemed to come from the walls themselves, surrounding her, suffocating her. Clara's flashlight flickered, and for a moment, she thought she saw faces in the walls, faces twisted in agony, their mouths open in silent screams. Following the whispers, Clara found a hidden door behind a crumbling wall. It was small and barely visible, but the voices grew louder as she approached. Her hands trembled as she pushed it open, revealing a dark, narrow staircase leading down. The air grew colder, and the whispers turned into a chorus of voices, all pleading for help. Clara hesitated, but something compelled her to descend. The basement was cold and damp, the air thick with the smell of decay. Clara's flashlight revealed a room filled with old, rusted tools and chains hanging from the walls. In the center was a chair, its leather straps worn and stained. The whispers grew louder, more frantic. "Get out," they warned, "before it's too late." Clara noticed something on the floor, a dusty leather-bound journal. She picked it up, her hands shaking. Clara opened the journal, her hands trembling. The pages were filled with frantic scribbles, detailing experiments conducted in the house. The writer, a scientist named Dr. Elias Holloway, spoke of trapping souls within the walls, of the house feeding on fear. The last entry was a warning. "The house is alive. It feeds on fear. Leave now, or you'll become one of them. Clara's heart pounded as she realized the truth. The house wasn't just haunted. It was a prison for the souls of those who had died within its walls. As Clara read the journal, the shadows in the basement began to move. They twisted and stretched, forming human-like shapes that reached out for her. The whispers turned into screams, and Clara realized she wasn't alone. The house was alive, and it wanted her. She dropped the journal and ran, the shadows closing in around her. Clara ran, the house groaning and shifting around her. The hallway stretched endlessly, the door she came through now gone. But then, she spotted a faint light, a crack in the foundation. With every ounce of strength, she clawed her way towards it, the house screaming in protest. She tumbled out into the cold night air, the house looming behind her. She looked back, and her blood ran cold. In the window, a figure stood, watching her. And then, it smiled. Clara returned to the motel, shaken but alive. She tried to forget what she had seen, but the whispers followed her. In the quiet hours, she would hear them, faint but unmistakable. The house hadn't let her go. It was still with her, and it was growing stronger. Determined to understand, Clara began researching the house's history. She discovered that it had been owned by a reclusive scientist in the 1920s who had conducted experiments on human consciousness. The experiments had gone horribly wrong, and the scientist had vanished. But the house remained, a living testament to his madness. Clara knew she had to go back. The house was calling to her, its whispers growing louder every night. Clara packed her bag, her hands trembling. She didn't know what she would find, but she knew one thing: the house wasn't done with her. As she approached the house for the second time, the door creaked open on its own. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. She stepped inside, and the door slammed shut behind her. The house was alive, and it had been waiting for her. Clara turned to leave, but the door was gone. The walls began to close in, the whispers turning into screams. She looked up and saw the figure in the window again, its smile wider now, more menacing. "Welcome home," it whispered. Clara realized the truth. She was trapped. The house had claimed her. As the walls closed in, Clara's flashlight flickered and died. In the darkness, she felt something cold and wet brush against her skin. The whispers grew louder, more frantic. "Join us," they said. "Join us." Clara screamed, but no sound came out. The house had her now, and it would never let her go.